But I think COVID also taught a lot of the shippers that price is not everything, and that reliability and capacity can be as important or even more important than price. During the peak of COVID, we had ocean freight rates up to 18, 19K. So it was not anymore like, okay, how much do I have to pay for it? It's more like, can you ship it?
We are here in Miami at the TIACA Air Cargo Forum conference, and with me is a special guest, Jan Harnisch, and Jan is the global CEO for Ocean and Air for Rhenus Logistics. Jan, great to have you join us for this conversation.
Thank you. Very nice meeting you.
Jan, let's just look at the air freight industry and the ocean freight. What are some of the top trends that you're picking up in terms of demand, supply, freight rates, and the global trade and commerce? Anything that you are on top of your mind that you want to highlight?
There's so much going on right now. Like if we look, I think over the last couple of weeks, the decrease in the ocean freight rates from like sky high rates during COVID to like almost a 70% decline is impacting the markets greatly. In the air freight, after like now almost 3 years in COVID, where basically no travel was possible around the world, belly capacity is returning, charter capacity is going back into the market. So I think, it's a lot going on, to be honest, at the moment.
How are you dealing with when you have customers who have signed for probably a long-term contract and the freight rates are on the decline? How are you realigning the relationship with your customers?
I think it's not so much of an issue for us, because if you look into it, during COVID, we of course went into long-term agreements, etc. But we tried to manage to make sure that only a certain percentage, a rather low percentage from our overall volume, is running on these long-term accounts. So for Rhenus as a whole, less than 10% are on the real long terms, and usually most of these contracts were back-to-back contracts. So of course our customers are asking. We are also in negotiations with the carriers and airlines, but it's not a major issue for us, to be honest, at the moment.
Are there any very specific trends that you see on the ocean freight side when it comes to capacity, overcapacity, and the demand on the decline, freight rates are on the decline? Are there any specific trends on the air freight side?
Yeah, I think the air freight side is a little bit more based on which kind of trade lane we are talking about. But we have big capacity issues at the moment out of Amsterdam. We have basically Europe as a whole is a problem, and of course China is a big issue for us. China with its zero COVID policy, it's still it's impacting our operations on a very regular basis.
We have seen over the last 2 to 3 years, particularly during COVID, the unpredictability of the freight industry. It's been quite unpredictable, and we don't know. And of course, we say that we need to build a resilient supply chain, but I think it's too difficult because of the constant change in the external circumstances. Today also we deal with the macroeconomic conditions which are significantly adversely affecting consumer demand. That has a strong impact on the freight industry, both ocean as well as air. What are your readings in terms of how do you align your business with the constantly changing freight industry trends?
I think, a big part for us is there to be in constant exchange with our partners and suppliers. So, of course, we talk to our customers a lot, and at the same time we try to match their demands together with the carriers and airlines. And I think, as you said, building a fully resilient supply chain in the current environment is almost impossible, because somewhere on the world there's always something going to happen. A big ship might get stuck in a canal, like COVID policy might shut down airports, etc. You cannot avoid all of this, but therefore I think the service we provide to our customers is to try to plan around it and find alternatives. And to do that, it is important for us that we have like a sufficient amount of partners and that our relationship with them is strong, so that we can react as fast as possible. I think as a forwarder is like at the end what we are as a middleman between our customers and the asset owners. Our task is to make sure that basically the assets that are in the market are used in the best possible way for our clients. And I think that's how we normally deal with these issues.
When you sit down with your customers and design and create the supply chain solutions as a logistic company, what are some of the things that they are asking for in the current circumstances, apart from a lower rate?
Yeah, I was about to say, it depends a bit on the country. In specific countries at the moment, it's rates. To be very honest. But I think COVID also taught a lot of the shippers that price is not everything. And that reliability and capacity can be as important or even more important than price. During the peak of COVID, we had ocean freight rates up to 18, 19K. So it was not anymore like, okay, how much do I have to pay for it? It's more like, can you ship it? And I think the good thing is that like a lot of shippers also took like learned from that, and they treat their supply chain differently. And I think for us, like a big part is to offer this kind of like a mix. If you look at our customer negotiations that we have today, it's basically we try to offer them like multiple products. Yeah, we say like, okay, of course it's price sensitive, so you want to have a proper rate, but you can't have all. So you say like, you want to have the cheap rate, then you need to have flexibility with the timing and equipment. Yeah, and we recommend them like pay for a certain part, pay the premium, and be sure you have it. Yeah, and you have the reliability behind, and the other part is floating. So it's kind of like a mixed calculation for for different products and different reliability.
No, people like you and people working in your team and in the company, they are more like an orchestra conductor. You are you're orchestrating a supply chain solution for your customers. But then this is going to be quite a difficult task. As a leader, how are you building up that capability within your team to deal with unpredictability, deal with uncertainty? That's a kind of leadership quality probably that you are building, or you have it with you and then you build within your team.
I think a big part for us for this is to have very diverse teams. Yeah? And this is not only from a cultural aspect, but also from an age perspective. Like it really helps for us that we have people who have a lot of experience in the industry, who have basically done it all, seen it all, pairing them up with like young talents who are really like coming in with fresh approaches, new ideas on how to do things. Yeah, and communication and exchange between them. As for logistics, it's like we have a huge network around the world, and everybody needs to work together. And that, of course, comes with its own challenges, like will it be cultural or language? Especially in Europe, language still might be an issue. But looking into this is like to build this kind of diverse structure where everybody tries to work together and achieve the same thing is, I think, for me, one of the key parts on like how to lead this kind of thing at an organization.
One of the things that is emerging in the last 3-4 years is the influence of technology, influence or deployment of digital tools in the logistic industry, in the freight industry. And I think there is no doubt that the future of freight is going to be digital. And a company like Rhenus Logistics will be a technology company because you will offer solution deploying technology. To that extent, how are you building up your digital capabilities?
And that's it's a huge topic that we could spend a long time discussing. But I think if I try to summarize it, is one part is independence. So if I think Rhenus is one of the few companies that is still building its own TMS and rolling it out, and also successfully doing so, I must say. But at the same time, it is also looking into partners and solutions. You mentioned like the freight forwarding industry is becoming more digital, but I think we also should not have the illusion that it will be digitalized in a fast way. There have been a lot of digital freight forwarders who tried and failed. And if you look into it, like on a normal shipment, you can have up to 14 parties involved, that need to cooperate, and they need to have the same standard of data, which is basically impossible to achieve. Basically you have to talk to a trucking company in Mumbai, to a port authority, to a customs broker in India, to an airline from somewhere, and the same thing on the receiving side, to warehouses, etc. And you need to make sure all of them touch this shipment at one point, and they have additional data coming in. To have that standardized on a global level, which is what is necessary to make it fully digital, is almost impossible. So you need to build solutions around it. And I think especially looking at this kind of data aggregators, like to be able to create this transparency is, I think, the first major step. And so if you look at what Rhenus is doing there, how we started, is first of all looking at like the data quality and the master data that is handled, and trying to get it to a level that it becomes reliable. Once this is achieved, we build our own systems on top of this, like a tariff management system, like a quotation system, but also like advanced track and trace systems, and of course the global operating system.
You see that a lot of the relationship, a lot of the business is conducted over your contractual agreements, service level agreements, and there are a lot of failings that happens within that. Do you think data could be used to assign accountability?
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant, was basically ensuring that you have a proper level of data quality. Data doesn't lie, and if it's clean data, you can clearly see where something will go wrong. As you said, 14 parties being involved, it's not going to be smooth all the time. So, but if you have this kind of level of data quality, you can pinpoint where it went wrong, at the exact point of time and the exact party that was involved and basically caused the mistake, to then improve on it and change it. So I think, yes, clear data quality, it creates accountability.
Jan, let me pick your brain on the global commerce and trade. Uh, you see, in the last 3-4 years, there's been a shift in terms of early used to be your production is diversified into different regions. And then you see that because of trade disputes, geopolitical disputes between countries, there's been a shift in terms of production shifting to closer to where the markets are. Then you see COVID playing a very significant role in terms of not having access to the production centers because of the very strict COVID lockdown rules. How do you see the transportation logistics sector evolving in terms of dealing with that? Because if the production moves from China and the Asian countries to closer to where the consuming market, these are not volume that is going to be come on either on the ships or on the planes.
I think like this concept of nearshoring is definitely a trend that we will see more of, but at the same time, our supply chains keep getting more and more complex. And I would not see that like there is an overall downtrend in volume, because even if you look at, like, for example, European companies now discussing, okay, is China the right choice for us? Yeah, should we try, like, after COVID, bring the production closer to Europe? That is possible. You still have materials and parts originating not only in China but also in India, in the US, etc., etc. To do basically complete nearshoring, where you get anything or everything in front of your own doorstep, is in today's world close to impossible. And then, of course, the next thing is production lines. If you see production costs, the reason why this, like, basically countries like America or the European Union are so dependent on China is, of course, also the cost component. And while we do have abilities now also to have like a cheaper production cost in Europe, China prices going up, it's, in my opinion, not to the level yet where you can fully replace it. Last point of this, you have to also keep in mind that these markets are huge consumer markets. Yes. So if you look like a German automotive industry or also like the pharma industry, like to look into like this like market scale of China with 1.6 billion people, or India, which is basically not far off, like these international companies can't ignore this market. So they might choose to produce there, but they will still source like in Germany and other countries. But overall, I think, yes, nearshoring will be something that will become more of a trend. But I still think that, yeah, due to this increase in complexity and this increase in consumption, there will still be more and more goods moving. And you can see that looking at the ships, like launching new 20,000 TEU vessels, or even every year bigger vessels are being launched and produced. The same on the air freight. It's a clear trend that production over the planet will increase, in my opinion.
What is your thoughts on ocean carrier companies, shipping companies getting into air freight, road freight, the integration that you see? Is that something that is it's a passing trend, or that's going to be there?
Let's see. I mean, it's not the first time they tried that, to be honest. Yeah, the last time it did not work. I think this time it will work for specific types of businesses. So if you look in, like, basically when the carriers have like this kind of BCO customers that they had all along, where basically these customers are also so far automated already that, like, this booking process there, you can really digitalize it almost completely. I think for this part of customers, yes, this will continue in future. But already in the past, like, if we did not do much for these customers, usually we were like kind of the middleman just for placing a booking or something. But yeah, the real deals were already negotiated with the carriers. If you look into like smaller companies, like normal production sized companies, I do not think that the plan of the carriers will really work out, that you can fully onboard them, simply because the service requirement of them is huge. And for carriers, they would have to basically build up complete freight forwarding companies at the same time, which would dilute their core business. So I think for some of the carriers, I think it's a good opportunity for them, especially because their pockets are filled right now. Yeah, but I do not think that all of the carriers that are trying this right now will succeed in this kind of mission.
Yeah, and no interview is full without a question on sustainability and
Yes.
carbon emissions.
Yes.
We have seen also a trend in terms of freight forwarders working with the shippers very
Yes.
closely in order to acquire, buy sustainable aviation fuel, alternate energy to fuel your ships. Are there any specific plans in terms of as a logistics service provider? Do you see that you can get shippers on? Somebody has to pay for it, so
Yes.
it has to be finally at the end of the day, it has to be the consumer, which basically the shipper. Are there any specific plans in terms of how do you address sustainability goals, carbon emission control plans?
So first of all, Rhenus is doing a lot in this field. I think we have a global head of sustainability who's been over the last years really working to deploy new solutions. We have our own fully carbon neutral LCL product. We have now our first carbon neutral air freight product going from Frankfurt to Sao Paulo. We are, as you said, we are working a lot with carriers and airlines to look into like what we can do there. But I also say I disagree a little bit with your statement. I do not think in the end it's the shippers or the consignees' responsibility to pay for sustainability. And that's a big difference where you can see if you look in the ocean freight compared to the air freight. I believe that it is the asset owner's first responsibility to try to like basically cause as little emission as possible. In the end, offsetting is not really a good solution. The solution should be producing less emissions first before you offset them. And there you can really see, whereas in the ocean freight areas, you have big carriers like Maersk and others really investing in modernizing their fleet, using better fuels and basically trying to cause less emission, become more efficient overall. Whereas in the airline industry, on the other hand, it's basically the most common way now is, yes, we have sustainable aviation fuel, please pay for it. And they give it to us and we're supposed to pass it on to the client, which will not be the solution, in my opinion. So especially if you look at like how sustainable aviation fuel is produced, there is no real clear standard yet on what this actually means. Yeah, and like if you have to basically deforest the rainforest to produce in the end crops that you can produce a sustainable aviation fuel with, you kind of get the feeling that this might not be the right way to do it, and it might be better to rather have more efficient engines, jet engines, and modernize your fleet, even though this is, of course, a huge cost component for the carriers. But I see the first responsibility there, and I must also say that if you look at the commitments that the different companies made, that on an airline side, I think it is like far behind what other companies are committing to. But from Arena's perspective, I think we see it as a middle thing, as a like kind of the middleman again. We offset part of the emissions ourselves that we don't pass on to our customers. We work with carriers like for example, Hapag-Lloyd at the moment, a very, very big like sustainable product launching next year. We have done the same thing with CNC in Asia already, and we're doing it with Maersk. Whereas like a corporation, we say, okay, of course, part of it needs to be also taken over by the consignee, but we also see that like each middleman needs to play their part. So first of all, carriers should do their homework, then the forwarders should also try to become better, and then in the end, this last bit of remaining cost should be passed on to the consumer.
Jan Harnisch, such a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
Great to have you for this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.